So, what really makes a genius? You know the image we all have, right? This lone wolf with a brain that's just on another level. But is that really the whole story? Let's dig in and unpack what it actually takes to achieve something monumental. Naturally, the first thing we all think of is IQ. It seems so simple. If you score above, say, 140 on the test, boom, you're in the club. It's a nice, clean number. But, when you actually start looking at the data, that whole idea starts to get, well, a little shaky. All right, check this out because it's pretty stunning. When researchers actually look at the link between IQ scores and real-world success for scientists, the connection just isn't there. The number of papers they publish, almost zero correlation. How often their work gets cited? Basically zero. What their peers and bosses think of them? Again, nothing. It seems that once you're in a room full of smart people, being the smartest doesn't really predict who's going to make the biggest waves. Okay, so does that mean IQ is totally irrelevant? Well, not so fast. While it might not predict who's the most successful within a group of scientists, let's be real. The historical figures we think of as geniuses, they were operating on a completely different plane of existence intellectually. I mean, just look at these numbers. We're talking about estimated IQs pushing 200 for guys like John Stuart Mill and Isaac Newton. It's just off the charts. And that creates a really interesting paradox, doesn't it? You absolutely need that massive intelligence, but just having more of it doesn't automatically make you a genius. So there has to be something else going on. And that brings us to the next big piece of the puzzle. Maybe it's not about the raw horsepower of the engine. Maybe it's all about how you drive it. So the focus shifts from how much intelligence someone has to how they actually use it. When you actually hear great thinkers describe their creative process, it is not a straight line. Not even close. Their toolkit is messy, it's intuitive. We're talking about just relentlessly trying things, making mistakes, letting ideas simmer in the back of your mind, thinking in pictures, and being totally open to those happy accidents. And this quote from the physicist Hermann von Helmholtz just nails it. He didn't see discovery as some simple march to the top. No. For him, it was this difficult, brutal climb up a mountain, full of wrong turns where you have to backtrack. That final, beautiful solution only shows up after a long, hard journey. And then you have Einstein himself, who said that, for him, words and language had almost nothing to do with his initial thought process. The creative magic for him came from playing with images, even physical feelings, like a kind of mental tinkering before words ever got involved. The hard work of translating all that into formal logic and math, that came much, much later. Okay, so we've got two big pieces. You need a high IQ, and you need a very specific way of thinking. So how do those two parts actually fit together? Well, modern research gives us a really powerful way to understand this. It's called the threshold hypothesis, and honestly, it's a game changer. Think of it like this. Intelligence is a gate. If your IQ is below a certain point, that gate is a pretty serious barrier to high-level creativity. But once you're through the gate, having an even higher IQ doesn't automatically push you further. That's when other things, like your thinking style or your personality, start to matter a whole lot more. And here's what that looks like in the data from a big NIH study. When we're talking about creative potential, your basic ability to come up with new ideas, IQ is a really strong predictor, but only up to a certain point. Once you cross that threshold, the connection basically just vanishes. It drops to almost nothing. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. That threshold isn't the same for every task. If you just want to produce a large quantity of ideas, the IQ bar is actually pretty low, around 85. But to come up with a lot of truly original ideas, the bar jumps way up to around that classic 120 mark. So it literally takes more intellectual horsepower to be original than it does to just be fluent. But wait, because here is the biggest surprise in all the research. That whole threshold idea, it only seems to apply to creative potential. When it comes to real-world creative achievement, actual discoveries, patents, books, the things that change the world, the threshold vanishes completely. For tangible accomplishments, it turns out that more intelligence is always an advantage. It seems turning potential into reality requires every last bit of cognitive ability you can get. And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most critical, piece of this whole puzzle. So let's say you have it all. You've got this super high IQ. You've got that unconventional, flexible way of thinking. Is your path to genius guaranteed? To answer that, researchers looked at a very unique group. teenagers who participated in the International Mathematics Olympiad. I mean, these are, without a doubt, some of the most talented young math minds on the entire planet, all measured by the same brutally difficult test. It's a perfect natural experiment. So they tracked these math prodigies throughout their careers, and they found this just staggering statistic. An Olympiad participant from a low-income country who scored identically to someone from a high-income country will go on to produce 35% fewer math publications in their lifetime. Their talent is the same. Their results are drastically different. The conclusion is as simple as it is profound. The raw material for genius, that exceptional talent, it's distributed all across the globe. But the opportunity to develop that talent, to turn it into new knowledge for all of us, that is not. And that leaves us with a final, urgent question. We've seen that genius is this rare combination of intellect, thinking style, and real-world achievement. But if the final ingredient is simply opportunity, then you have to ask, how much faster could the frontier of knowledge advance if we just made sure that no talent, no matter where it's born, gets left behind?